Alright, here we go with the whole numbers multiplication quiz. Just remember that if you want to skip ahead to any particular problem, you can do that in the description box below. You might need to click on Show More, but it should have the times for each problem here. So here we go, we're multiplying here. So let's start with number 1. We're doing 43 times 8, and a lot of us, we like to do this vertically instead of horizontally. We like to work up and down. Alright, so when we start here, if we're going to do this with the traditional or standard algorithm, the way that a lot of us learn it, we're going to start with 8 times 3, and that is going to give us, and I'll write this in the on the side here, 8 times 3, which would give us 24. So we're going to write down the 4, and we're going to carry the 2. Alright, we'll always write down the number from the ones place, 4 in the ones place, and then carry any number from the tens place. And next we're going to do then 8 times 4, in the 8 times the 4 in the tens place, which gives us 32. But now we're going to add 2 to that. So 32 plus 2 is going to give us 34. And so there's our final answer, 344. I'll just rewrite it here, make it look a little bit nicer. 344, final answer. Moving on to number 2. Again, a lot of us like to work vertically instead of horizontally. But we're going to start again with 4 times 1, and that's an easy one. 4 times 1 just equals 4. Oops. There we go. Nothing to carry here, so just write down a 4. And next we move on to 4 times 6, which is 24. So we're going to write down the 4 and carry the 2 above the 5. Some people write it on the side, some people keep it in their head, but really we're doing that. And then so we did 4 times 1, 4 times 6, now 4 times 5, which is 20. And again, this is just knowing your math facts. 4 times 5 is 20. But then again, we're going to add this 2 that we carried. So the 20 plus the 2 we carried gives you 22. And if we want to be nice here, we can count 1, 2, 3 and put a comma. This is 2,244. Final answer on number 2. Not too tricky so far. Number 3 is where it's going to get a little more complicated. We want to make sure we remember how to do everything here. So again, I'll start though 32 times 81. And first thing we're going to start with is 1 times 2, which gives us 2, and we'll write that down. Nothing to carry again. But next we're going to move on to stick with the 1. 1 times 3, which equals 3. And again, nothing to carry, or single digit answer, so just the 32. Alright, and then when we move to the 8, here's the trick. And I'll switch colors here for this one, but when we move to the 8, some people like to write a 0 here, some people write an X, some people just leave it blank. Personally, I just leave this blank. When we start multiplying with the 8 in the tens place, we're going to start writing our answer here in the tens place. Okay, so whether you do an X or a 0 or leave it blank, when we do 8 times 2, that is going to be underneath the 3. That's where we're going to start it. We're going to start it in the tens place. So 8 times 2 will give us 16, and I'll write this in orange, I guess. So this will be 6, carry a 1, and then we're going to move to 8 times 3, and then when our math facts, that's 24. So remember that we have the 1 that we carried that needs to get added on. So 24 plus the 1 is going to give us 25. And then final step in this problem is we have to add these results. So whether you had a 0 here or an X or you left it blank, the 2 just basically just comes straight down. Then 3 plus 6 gives you 9. And then 5 with nothing above it and 2 with nothing above it. So final answer, 2,592. Looking at number 4 here, 74 times 20. Let's rewrite that vertically. And now this is one to be careful. I don't know why. We're going to start with 0 times 4, And I just see so many students make the silly mistake that they say that's 4. But anything times 0, or 0 times anything, gives you 0. So that's what we got there. Whoops, let me switch to green there. I think maybe some students, when they make that silly mistake, maybe they think they're adding 0 plus 4. That would give them 4. But it's just 0. And then next we're going to do 0 times 7, which again is not 7. 0 times 7 is 0. And I'll show you a shortcut here for this one. And if you use the partial product, you'll know this trick. But so that's it. 0 times 4 is 0. 0 times 7 is 0. Now we're on to the 2, and remember that one we can put a 0 here or put an X. I just like to leave it blank, but anyway I do it, when I start with my multiplication, 2 times 4, I'm going to put the result right here in the tens place. So let me write that over here on the side. So now we're doing 2 times 4, which gives us 8. So that 8 will go in the tens place, nothing to carry. Remember that it's not really 2 times 4, it's really 20 times 4. 2 in the tens place represents 20, so 20 times 4 gives you an 8 in the tens place. And then we're almost done here. 2 times 7, which gives you 14. Whoops, 2 times 7 equals 14. And we can just write down the 14. Since there's no more digits to multiply with, you can just write that down. Okay, so that's the multiplication step. Next is to add, and this is very easy. 0 with nothing is 0. 0 plus 8 is 8. And then the 4 and the 1. So final answer, 1,480. If you want to see a shortcut on this one, I'll show you the shortcut. Otherwise, if you want to move on to number 5, remember you can click in the description box to skip ahead. But let's get that shortcut. So the shortcut, and this works anytime that you have a number, when you're multiplying and you have a whole number that ends in a 0, or it's possible both numbers end in a 0. What you can do is you can kind of ignore that 0, pretend that 0 is not there, and treat it like it's 74 times 2 instead of 74 times 20. And when we do that, that's very easy. We've already done our multiplication facts over here. So we already got 2 times 4 is 8, and we've got 2 times 7 is 14. Now, to find the answer, notice that all we have to do is take 148 here and put a 0 on the end of it, so that when we do 74 times 20, that's all that's going to happen. You're going to have that extra 0 on the end. And that's it. So the 0 here means you have a 0 here. So that's sometimes a little bit quicker. You don't have to, you can kind of basically skip this line, and you don't run the risk of making that silly mistake of saying 0 times 4 is 4 and 0 times 7 is 7. It's a little bit of a shortcut. And again, if you do partial products, then you already know how to do that. But anyways, let's move on to number 5. This is again where you could use the shortcut if you want. You could do 63 times 53 and get an answer, and then just put a 0 on the end of it. But I'll do it the long way. Let's see here. Okay, so again, we're going to start with both ones placed 3 times 0 or 0 times 3. And again, that one is easy, but don't make a silly mistake on it. Anything times 0 is 0, or 0 times anything is 0. So start with that 0 there. Next we're going to do 3 here times the 3 in the tens place. 3 times 3 gives you a 9. And just write that down, nothing to carry. Oh my goodness, write a good 9. There we go. That's a 9. And then moving on, sticking with the 3 on the bottom, 3 times 6 gives you 18. And there's nothing else, so we don't need to carry that 1 because it's the last digit on the left. So we can just write down the 18. Okay. Alright, now remember, when we get to the 5, we're going to start right here. If you put a 0 or an X, any way you do it, or leave it blank, you're going to start right here. And then it'll start with 5 times 0 or 0 times 5. Same thing either way. And again, be careful. That is not 5, that is 0. Moving on now to 5 times the 3, or 3 times 5, either way gives you 15. Here we got to carry the 1 to the 6, and now we're going to do 5 times 6, which will give us 30, And now remember that we have that 1 that we carried that's going to be added on to the 30, which will give us 31. And I'm running out of room here. Okay, so 31. We'll redraw that separating line there. Alright, so that's the step after we do all the multiplication. Now the last part is we need to add. So 0 with nothing or 0 with 0 over here starts us with 0. 9 plus 0 gives you 9. 8 plus 5 gives you 13. And you got a 1 to carry. And then 1 plus 1 plus 1 gives you 3. And then the 3 stays there. So 3, 9, 0. And if you want, there would be a comma right there. 33,390. Again, if you want to do a shortcut here, let's copy and paste this. Shortcut, you could do 63 times 53. What you're going to find, I'm going to skip going through the steps here, but we already did all the multiplication facts over here. What you're going to find is that you get an answer of 3339 when you do all that multiplication. 3,339. And I'm skipping showing the work here, but then remember, if you want to put a 0 on here, that just means you need to put a 0 right there also. Okay, so that sometimes might save a little bit of time. You could have skipped this step, 0 times 3, and you could have skipped this step if you would have done that shortcut. Okay, and number 6, we do have a 0 in here, but we need this 0. There's no shortcut that I know of that says, oh, you could just do 85 times 38 and then put a 0 in the middle. No, that shortcut doesn't work, or I'm not aware of any shortcut, so that one's out. We need to put the 0 in there. We need to do the full multiplication here. Okay, so we're going to start here with 8 times 5 or 5 times 8. Both numbers from the ones place, that's 40. So we're going to write down the 0 and carry the 4. And next we're going to do 8 times 0 or 0 times 8. Remember, that's deceptively easy, maybe too easy. So 0 times 8, 8 times 0 is 0. And then remember, we've got to add that 4 in there. So 0 plus 4 is going to give us 4. Almost done here with the 8. We got to do 8 times 8. Which gives us 64, and no more digits, so don't have to carry that. Whoops, switch it to green. 64 going there. And we're done with the 8 on the bottom, or the 8 from the 38. Alright, next coming with the 3 again, leaving a blank right here, or a 0 or an X, but nothing goes there. 3 times 5 is going to go right here, and 3 times 5 is, or 5 times 3 is 15, equals 15. And we're going to write down the 5, let me switch it to orange here. We're going to write down the 5, and we're going to carry the 1. Now again, some people will write the 1 on the side, or they'll just keep it in their head, but you might want to scribble out that 4, because we're done with it. We're not using that 4 anymore. For me, it's in different colors, the 4 and the 1, so that might help me. But next, moving on to 3 times 0 or 0 times 3. Remember, and that's 0. Anything times 0 or 0 times anything is 0. But we've got to add that 1, so we put the 1 down there. And then one more step for multiplication, 8 times 3 or 3 times 8, which gives us 24. Nothing was carried, so there's nothing that we have to add on there. So we got 24. And now we're going to add to find the final answer. So 0 with nothing gives us 0, or the X or the 0, whatever you put here. 4 plus 5 gives you 9. 4 plus 1 gives you 5. 6 plus 4 gives you 10. Carry the 1, and 1 plus 2 gives you 3. So 3, 0, 5, 9, 0, or if we put that comma in there, that's more easily recognized as 30,590. Alright, moving on to the word problems. Make sure we're reading instructions here. So it says, decide which operation to use. So it could be add, subtract, multiply. It won't be divide on here because this is the multiplication quiz. And if you take the class with me, when you take this, because we haven't yet done division. But it could be add, subtract, or multiply. So we have to figure that out first. And then we will do the work and answer the question. So number 7 says, Kevin brought 13 apples to a picnic. Brian brought 25 apples. Jill brought 34 oranges. Kristen brought 47 apples. How many apples were there total? So again, read through the information, but sometimes it's helpful to go back and actually start with the question. Question is, how many apples? How many apples were there total? How many apples? So when I go back and I look at this question, I identify some of these numbers. I say, well, it's 13 apples. Okay, it's 25 apples. It's 34 oranges, and it's 47 apples. So since the question is asking for apples, I actually say, this 34 oranges, I don't care about. Again, we call that extra information. It's in there, it happened, but it's not going to help me answer the question. Okay. When I'm looking for the total, I'm going to put all these apples together. So that's the idea. We're putting all these apples together. And again, for me, I don't necessarily do keywords, but when you're putting things together, that means that you are adding. So we're going to do addition, we're going to do plus, however you want to say it, we're going to do that operation. Okay, and we're going to add up all those numbers for the apples. So we'll have 13 apples plus 25 apples plus 47 apples, and that is all of our apples. Again, the 34 is oranges. We're not going to include that in our total of apples. So as we're doing this work, adding 3 numbers, remember there's different strategies here. You can start with 3 plus 5 would give you 8, and then 8 plus the 7 would give you 15, and then the 1 gets carried. You'd have the 1 plus 1 would give you 2, 2 plus 2 would give you 4, and then 4 plus that 4 would give you 8. So final answer, 85 apples. So here again for number 8, we want to first decide which operation we're going to do. We're going to add, subtract, or multiply. Number 8 says 1 foot is equal to 12 inches and 3 feet equals a yard. And the thing to remember here, 1 foot and 3 feet, this is one of the wacky things in English. These are the same unit. This is the singular 1 foot, and this is the plural 3 feet. So 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, 3 feet equals a yard. The question says, how many inches are equal to 24 feet? So this one's kind of tricky. Again, we've got some extra information here, but if I start with the question is asking me how many inches. And then it's also giving me some further information. It's giving me 24 feet. So in the question, there's no mention of yards or a yard. So I'm pretty sure that right here, to know that 3 feet equals a yard is not needed. That's extra information for this question. But what we do have here, with the 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, if you remember, we can make a rate out of that. And then we can use that rate along with the 24 feet. So the way it's going to work here, the 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. The rate, we can have the 1 foot over 12 inches, or we can flip it around and we can have 12 inches over 1 foot. So we're doing this as a fraction, and pardon my sloppy writing, but I'll try and clean it up here in a little bit. We're going to use one of these fractions possibly, along with the 24 feet, to answer this question. So I'm going to start with the 24 feet that are given to me as part of the question. And remember that it's important here to write out the words as we're setting this up. If you're doing it like I do, you want to write the words here. 24 feet, and I know I'm going to multiply by one of these two fractions. Now the question is which one. It makes a difference which number's on top, which number's on the bottom. And with feet here, we want feet or a foot on the bottom. So this is going to be my fraction. I'm going to have 12 inches over 1 foot. Again, that's how I set this up. There's other ways to multiply this. The shortcut is going to be just to do 24 times 12, and some people see that, they recognize it, and I say good for them. But I'm always wondering, like, why do I just multiply? Why is that the shortcut? This is what tells me. So I start with the whole number of feet, and then my fraction, I want the 1 foot on the bottom. So remember that you have that matchup of the units. Another way, again, we've talked about in class a little bit, is the answer is going to be in inches. When we get our answer, whatever it is, if we get 5 or we get 12 or we get 100, it's going to be 100 inches or 5 inches or this many inches. So some people might remember that, oh, the unit for the answer has to go on top of that fraction. So how many inches, we're going to put inches on the top. But either way you do it, if you can get this set up, you're looking pretty. And now to remember how to multiply this whole number by this fraction, now you can drop, let me draw a line there, now you can drop the units, you don't need them anymore. So we're going to do here, I guess I'll write it to the right, we're going to do the first number, 24, times the top number, 12, and then divide by the bottom number, which is 1. Okay, and so I'll do that work here in just a little bit, but again, if you can get this set up, that to me, that's the challenge, to figure out that it's really going to be 24 times 12. Remember that dividing by 1, specifically by 1, doesn't change anything, so you can skip that part. And again, some people are going to know. They're going to see the shortcut and they're going to know 24 times 12. Just be careful, because some people might see division. They might say, oh, if we do 12 into 24, that goes exactly 2 times with no remainder. But unfortunately, that is not what we're doing. We're not going to divide. That's me trying to trick you. That's me choosing those numbers to try to trick you. So don't fall for that. Okay, but here we go to actually do the operation here. 24 times 12. And I'm going to go a little bit quicker on here because hopefully you've already mastered it. So I'm going to start with 2 times 4 gives me 8 with nothing to carry, and then 2 times 2 gives me 4. And then the 1, I can put, when I come to the 1, I can put a 0 or an X here, but for me I just leave it blank, and I'm going to start right here. 1 times 4, 4 times 1 gives me 4, and 1 times 2 gives me 2. And then last step, I need to add. So 8 with 0 or 8 with an X or 8 with nothing gives you 8. 4 plus 4 also gives you 8. And then the 2 with nothing above it gives you 2. And then if you want to be nice, 288 what? What are the units? Well, the question was how many inches? So that's what we have here, 288 inches. Final answer. Okay, moving on to number 9. And we still have the same instructions. We have to decide which operation to use. So read the question and decide, should we add, subtract, or multiply? And then we'll answer the question. So number 9 says, a bus can carry 55 people. How many people can be carried on 11 buses? So this, to me, again, when I look at this, I see a bus, that's one. One bus can carry 55 people. We are comparing 1 bus to 55 people. So that's a rate. So that might help me here. And then the question says, how many people, okay, so I've got, that's related to 55 people maybe. How many people can be carried on 11 buses? And I go, oh, hey, we've got another relationship between people and buses. So I'm going to start here. This to me says I'm going to multiply. I'm going to multiply 11 buses times the rate, and I just have to make sure I set that fraction up right. So I'm going to start with the 11 buses. And again, remember the importance of writing the words, because that's going to help guide me. 11 buses, and then this rate, I can either do 1 bus on top and 55 people on the bottom, or I can do 55 people on top and 1 bus on the bottom. But because I have buses here, that means I want that 1 bus to go on the bottom. So the 1 bus goes on the bottom because I want those units to match. I want these right here to be the same units. Buses and bus, same units. So that means the 55 people has to go on top. And then if I remember that this is going to be the first number, and I don't need the words, times the top number divided by the bottom number. And again, some people will see this shortcut and they'll say, well, I'm just going to do 11 times 55. To me, I like to use that rate to know. Because again, you could do 55 divided by 11 and it works out to exactly 5. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do multiplication. We're going to do 11 times 55. So let's get rid of that. Again, with the dividing by 1, that's not going to change it when it's dividing by 1. If it was 2 buses can carry 55 people, or 5 buses or something like that, it'd be divided by 5 or divided by 2, and that we would have to do. But because dividing by 1, you're going to get the exact same result when you divide by 1, kind of like when you multiply. So let's do the work now. 11 times 55. So 5 times 1 is 5, and 5 times 1 is 5. And then come into this 5, put a 0 here, put an X or leave it blank, but start here when you come to the second 5. 5 times 1 is going to be 5, and 5 times the other one is going to be another 5. And then we add 5 plus 0, or 5 with nothing is 5. In the middle, 5 plus 5 is 10. You got a 1 to carry, and 1 plus 5 gives you 6. So final answer here, 605. And what were the units? It was how many people. So that is 605 people. Final answer there. Okay, last word problem on this quiz, number 10. We're still deciding which operation to use, add, subtract, or multiply. Number 10 says, the math teacher assigned 40 addition problems and 35 multiplication problems. Miguel has already done 19 multiplication problems. How many multiplication problems does Miguel still have to do? So again, as I go through there and I say, okay, I've got 40 addition problems, I've got 35 multiplication problems, and then I've got 19 multiplication problems. And the question asks me, how many multiplication problems does Miguel still have to do? So I'm thinking I don't care about the 40 addition problems. The question asks about multiplication problems only. So the 35 multiplication problems and the 19 multiplication problems, that's what we're going to have. So some of you might jump ahead and say, I know it's going to be subtraction, but just what you might think about is, if you take the problems that Miguel has done, the ones that he's finished, plus the ones that he has not done, the ones that are not finished, that's going to give you the total number of problems. Or because we have the total was 35. That was the total number of problems. And we have what Miguel has already done. Miguel's already done 19. So we have those numbers, excuse me. We know this is a 19. We know this is a 35. And we're thinking to ourselves, okay, how do we figure out what he has not done, what he still has to do? And if you remember your fact families, we could simply rearrange this and say that, well, if you take done plus not done equals total, you can arrange this, let's change that to maybe purple. The total minus the number you have done is going to give you the number that are not done. Because we know both of these. We know the total and we know how much is done. So we can combine those with subtraction. So we can wind up doing here 35 minus 19. 35 take away 19. We want to separate. We want to just to come up with how many are not done. So we might want to do that vertically. 35 minus 19. Whoops, minus 19. There we go. And when I do the subtraction here, be careful. Remember that with subtraction, if the top number is smaller than the bottom number, then you need to borrow. And that's what we have. 5 take away 9 doesn't work, so 5 has to borrow from the 3. The 3 becomes a 2, and the 5 becomes a 15. And now we're okay to subtract. Now we can do 15 take away 9 gives you 6. And then the 2 that we have, it was a 3, but now it's a 2. 2 take away 1 gives you 1. So final answer here is we have 16 multiplication problems. And I'll just write multiplication. I'll just abbreviate this. Multiplication problems. Okay. Remember that if you are confident that subtraction was the correct operation here, you can do a check step. Oops, check, and you can take the 19 plus the 16 and you should get 35 when you do that. Okay, and now that doesn't tell you, that subtraction was the correct step. That's just remember how to check a subtraction problem. So 6 plus 9 gives you 15, carry the 1, and then 1 plus 1 plus 1 gives you 3, and I go, alright, checks out. My final answer is still 16, but this makes me feel very confident. Alright, one more. So here we go with the last problem, number 11. It's giving us the option here, true or false. So one of these is going to be our answer. For numbers a and b, a times b is the same as b times a. And let me just type that out. Okay, so just remember with that multiplication symbol, we usually say times a times b, b times a. So it's really asking us about, again, what's called in math is the commutative property, which basically says if you have the commutative property, then you can switch the numbers. You can switch the order of the numbers. A times b, b times a, doesn't matter. It works with addition. If I do in addition, I can do 5 plus 3 or 3 plus 5, and that's supposed to be addition up there. Either way, I get 8. So the answer does not depend on the order of the numbers. With subtraction, it does not work. If you try to do 5 minus 3, and you try and switch and you do 3 minus 5, this does not give you the same result. 5 minus 3 is 2, and 3 minus 5. And whole numbers we usually don't do because we say if you only have 3, you cannot take away 5. But in math, actually, you can say it's negative 2. You have this little minus sign here, and that's different. These are different answers, positive 2 versus negative 2. So subtraction does not work, addition does, but we're asked about multiplication. We're asked about times. So we might just try an example. Again, if we pick maybe just like 5 and 3, and we think to ourselves, okay, 5 times 3 and 3 times 5, what do we get in either case? 5 times 3 is 15, and 3 times 5 is also 15. So it appears that it doesn't matter. It appears that they are the same, which is what the question is asking us. And actually, this is a property. This works. So the answer here is true. And that's our multiplication quiz.